Hey guys, tonight we begin a journey that's dry, dusty, and absolutely gilded with too much gold. You're somewhere in West Africa, the early 1300s. The stars are sharp overhead, the desert wind is low and hot, and you're squinting into the distance because someone mentioned a king whose riches made European bankers feel poor by comparison. You'll follow his life from an unglamorous start to an absurdly lavish pilgrimage, and along the way, you'll probably fall asleep. Because, let's be honest, this is boring history for sleep. The most exciting thing coming up might be a caravan schedule. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, post your city and your local time. Let's see who else is wide awake at this hour. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The desert is whispering. It's not poetic, it's literal. The wind skims low across the sand dunes, sending sharp bursts of grit against your ankles as you walk the old trails of the Mali Empire. You're not royalty. Not yet. You're just part of the crowd, part of a long, sleepy line of people moving west to east, carrying goods, gossip, and occasionally the burden of a camel's mood swing. You pass through Niani, a capital that isn't loud or grand, but feels warm in a cracked mud and sun-baked kind of way. This is where it all starts, or sort of doesn't. See, Mansa Musa wasn't born a king. He wasn't even supposed to rule. He was a member of the Keita dynasty, yes, but he didn't stand in the spotlight, sharpening his crown collection. His life began, quietly, in the margins of a very loud empire. You walk through small villages where people brew millet beer and sing in languages you don't understand, but that thrum with the same rhythms that carried oral histories for generations. Musa would have grown up hearing tales of Sundiata Keita, the Lion King of Mali, not the Disney one, who built an empire that stretched wider than most European kingdoms of the time. And in the background, always, is gold. It's not flashy. You're not tripping over it, but it lingers, flecks in a trader's pouch, a shimmer in the river silt, a luster behind every serious transaction. Mali isn't just rich, it's drenched in wealth, in that quiet, generational way. The kind where even the beggars carry a bit of bling. Historians still argue whether Musa had formal schooling, or if he was just really, really good at listening. But you imagine him young, sitting in the shade of a baobab tree, eavesdropping on elders, learning how power actually works, through people, not proclamations. You pass a market. Goats, salt cakes, spices in cracked bowls, a man selling snake, oil that suspiciously smells like crocodile fat. Fun fact. Actual crocodile dung was once used in North African sunscreen recipes. So lather up, if you're bold. There's a structure here, unseen but present. The empire's intricate web of clan alliances, tax routes, and imperial outposts. Mali isn't just some dusty kingdom, it's a machine. Trade pulses through it, from the forests of the south to the Mediterranean ports far to the north. Musa, even as a boy, would have felt that hum under his feet. You smell smoke. Not danger, just cooking fires. You drift past griots, those keeper storytellers whose memories hold the shape of history like a library without shelves. One recites the bloodlines of the Keita rulers in a voice so calm it could lull a crocodile. There's a tension in the air though, a shift. Musa is growing, and somewhere far off, a decision is being made that will change his life. Here's where it gets odd. One day, the sitting king, Mansa Abu Bakr too decides he's done with land. He wants to explore the Atlantic Ocean. Some sources claim he set off with hundreds of ships to discover what lies beyond the waves. Others think that's mostly myth. Historians still debate whether Abu Bakr actually disappeared into the sea or just conveniently stepped aside. But the result is the same. You blink, and suddenly, Musa is no longer a footnote. He's the ruler, the emperor, Mansa of Mali, and he's about to do everything except rule quietly. You look up from your slow plod through Niani, and there's Musa now, tall, composed, radiating, a calm authority that says, "Yes, I accidentally inherited the most gold in the world, and no, I'm not panicking." He doesn't take the throne with fire and trumpet, he just settles into it, like a man sinking into warm imperial bathwater. No coronation spectacle, no dragon, no sword in a stone. Just a man suddenly responsible for the largest empire in West Africa, stretching across modern-day Mali, Mauritania, Senegal, Gambia, Guinea, and even a slice of Niger. And as you settle into your own rhythm, matching the quiet pace of history, you start to realize this story isn't about a king who sought power. It's about one who had it thrust into his lap and decided to do something almost comically ambitious with it. You yawn. The air smells faintly of rain now, though the sky remains clear. The desert holds its breath. Tomorrow, Musa will start planning his legacy. But tonight, you just drift with him at the edge of power, the last moment before gold turns to spectacle. You wake, not from sleep, but from political inertia. One moment, you're a minor noble in a place so warm the lizards nap in shifts. The next, you're responsible for a territory larger than most European maps even bother to draw accurately. No one asked if you wanted this. Your predecessor, Mansa Abu Bakr II, essentially waved goodbye with a fleet of ships and an overpacked lunch, mumbling something about the edge of the ocean. And then he was gone. And you, yes, you, are Mansa Musa now. No one's clapping. There's no viral scroll announcing your ascension. It's just quiet, dusty, hot. Your advisors look at you like, well? And the camels keep chewing like they've seen this before. You sit there, processing the scale. Your Mali isn't just a city or a province. It's a continent-spanning empire with patchwork loyalties, fluctuating trade routes, and at least 3 distant cousins who would love to stab you with ceremonial spoons. You don't get to ease in. You get tossed into the throne with a ledger in one hand and the expectations of a gold-drenched empire in the other. The first thing you notice, just how much gold there is. Mali practically leaks the stuff. It bubbles up in riverbeds, glitters in cave seams, and gets exchanged casually in marketplaces where someone might buy a cow with a nugget the size of your thumbnail. But gold without order is just shiny chaos. You move through your palace slowly, noting the scribes, the griots, the soldiers cleaning their weapons with a level of boredom that suggests they haven't fought in years. You wonder how long peace lasts in a kingdom this wealthy. Spoiler, not forever. Historians still argue whether Musa's early reforms were inherited from predecessors or crafted by his own hand. What's clearer is that Musa understood something fundamental. Power looks good on paper, but it's nothing without control. So you get to work. First, infrastructure. You study the empire's arteries, trade routes leading north to the Berber cities, east toward Egypt, south into the forested kingdoms, and west. Well, the Atlantic swallows most who go west. You don't redraw borders. you reinforce them. You standardize taxes, install loyal governors, and turn key outposts into fortified trade hubs. Suddenly, things move more efficiently. Salt from Tagaza meets gold from Bambuk in markets that smell of leather and date syrup. You're not just a ruler, you're a logistician in royal robes. Second, the people. Mali isn't monolithic. It's a mosaic of languages, faiths, and grumpy tribal chiefs who remember when your grandfather's grandfather owed them a goat. You don't fight them, yet. You co-opt them. You let them keep their traditions, but under your system. A bit of Islamic law here, some traditional rituals there, and a lot of nodding wisely while griots chant your praises in public squares. You quickly learn the power of symbolism. Every Friday, you're seen at the mosque, devout and measured. You don't just say you believe, you let it breathe from your movements. But at night, you're also careful not to ruffle feathers. Ancestral spirits still whisper in this land, and you know better than to kick a ghost nest. One of your first big moves, build trust, literally. You fund rest stops along caravan routes. Think medieval motels with slightly more goats. Traders now travel safer, faster. Your empire becomes a place where goods not only pass through, but linger. That means taxes. That means influence. That means your name is now being muttered reverently in faraway towns where no one can even spell Mansa. One fringe tale floats into court. A man from Genoa says he met a Moroccan merchant who swore you could touch gold just by walking barefoot through Mali. Is it true? Of course not. But you don't correct the story. Let them dream. Your image is changing. No longer the accidental king, you're now the embodiment of stable excess. And yet, you feel restless. Power is addictive, but it's also hollow if no one sees it. You want the Islamic world to know Mali is more than a rumor at the edge of the map. You want Cairo to talk about you. You want Mecca to tremble a little when your caravan arrives. So, you start to plan. Not a war, not a festival, but a pilgrimage, a hajj that no one will forget. It starts small, just a list. Then the list becomes a scroll. Then the scroll becomes a 10-foot document with gold-trimmed corners and a committee of scribes arguing over camel feed rations. You don't just pack bags, you outfit an entourage, 60,000 people, including servants, soldiers, entertainers, scholars, translators, cooks, and a deeply confused Portuguese guy who keeps asking what this has to do with spices. Oh, and 100 camels, carrying gold, not coins, bars, dust, goblets, entire thrones, because subtlety is for peasants. You don't leave right away. You rehearse. You time water breaks. You teach the troops to walk in perfect rows. You pick the brightest fabrics, the softest shoes, the loudest flutes. This is your statement to the world. Mali is here, and our lunch money can buy your kingdom. Historians still wonder if this was vanity or faith. Truth is, you don't separate the two. In your mind, opulence is devotion. God gave you this wealth, and it would be rude not to show it off a little, right? You step out of your palace gates one morning, early before the heat sets in. Your mother watches from a carved window. Your griot begins a soft chant. And behind you, the longest, richest parade in African history begins to move. The streets hum with sandals and hooves. The gold glints, the dust rises, the empire watches, and somewhere far to the northeast, a merchant in Cairo sneezes, unaware that in a few months you'll crash his economy with sheer generosity. But that's for later. For now, you just walk. One measured step after another, desertward, toward legend. You've walked for weeks. The sun has turned your bones soft, and your mind into a warm bowl of porridge. You've stopped counting the number of palm-shaded oases and identical patches of sand that whisper, "You've been here before," even when you haven't. This is the Sahara, less a desert and more an ocean made of heat and regret. And yet, your caravan doesn't falter. It stretches behind you like a slow-moving river of gold and linen, 60,000 strong. Scholars, guards, slaves, family, curious tagalongs, a griot who hasn't stopped narrating your virtues since Tuesday, and 100 camels loaded with enough gold to cause minor gravitational shifts. You've passed through Tuat and Tamanrasset, through the land of the Berbers, who greet you with wary respect and sell dates at a markup that suggests they've done this before. You hand out gold, not sparingly, lavishly. A gold bar here, a pouch of dust there, to strangers, to porters, to anyone who looks at you with wide eyes and decent dental hygiene. It's not showing off, you insist. It's baraka, divine generosity. And sure, you may have tipped a local imam with a golden sword so heavy he now walks with a lean. But hey, he looked like he needed one. You arrive in Cairo under a hot sun and a cloud of rumour. The Sultan's people have already heard whispers of your coming. A West African king? With what? Servants, camels, gold. The streets buzz like a drumskin. Children hang off balconies. Merchants reposition their displays and mentally double their prices. And then you enter. Your entourage floods the city like honey downstairs. Slow, rich, and impossible to ignore. Every stop you make, every step, leaves a trace of gold in your wake. You tip heavily. You pray publicly. You stay at the finest accommodations Cairo has to offer, and when the beds are too small, you have new ones built. This is diplomacy through excess. The Sultan of Egypt, Al-Nasir Muhammad, sends word. He'd like to meet you formally. You politely decline. At first, historians still debate why. Was it snobbery, protocol, pure exhaustion? Whatever the cause, local scholars record that it took considerable negotiation, and possibly a few very polite threats, for Musa to agree to an audience. But when he finally visits the Mamluk court, oh, does he deliver. You don't walk in, you arrive, robed in embroidered finery, dusted in gold, accompanied by guards whose swords are more ornamental than practical, but intimidating nonetheless. You bow low, recite the correct praises, and present gifts that make the Egyptian court briefly forget it's already rich. And then you stay. For months. You, the devout pilgrim, camp out in Cairo long enough to cause economic confusion. See, all that gold you handed out? The charity, the purchases, the casual, here, take a brick of bullion for your trouble moments. They destabilized the market. Inflation shot up. Gold lost value. Bread prices wobbled. Entire trade balances groaned under the weight of your generosity. Modern economists still cite your Cairo visit as one of the earliest recorded cases of gold-induced inflation. That's right. You flexed so hard, you wrecked an economy. But you didn't mean to. You thought you were being kind. You thought gold was limitless. In Mali, it practically grew on trees, or at least near rivers and mines that might as well have been bottomless. You assumed the world could absorb your wealth like a dry sponge. Spoiler, it couldn't. Even years later, Cairo's economy still limped a little, coughing up gold coins that now bought slightly less bread than before. But eventually, you leave. You gather your caravan, leaner now, but still grand. You've still got another goal in mind: Mecca, the holy city, your true spiritual destination. This entire spectacle wasn't just a parade. It was a pilgrimage, the Hajj. So you travel again, through dusty valleys, across windswept dunes, past cities you've only read about. You stop in Medina to pray. You ride beneath starlight, whispering Quranic verses to yourself. The laughter fades, the drums quiet, the gold still shines, but your focus shifts. Mecca is overwhelming, not because it's loud or lavish, but because it isn't. It's humble, ancient, and spiritually electric. You arrive not as a king, but as a believer. You walk the same circles, recite the same prayers, stand shoulder to shoulder with men whose sandals are older than your guards. And you feel, for the first time in years, small. And it feels peaceful. You offer your final prayers. You donate again, of course you do. And this time, it feels less like a spectacle, more like surrender. But even in Mecca, you leave echoes. Your caravan, your generosity, your sheer presence. It leaves an impression on the Islamic world. Scholars speak of you. Poets write odes. Maps begin to feature the land of gold more prominently, even if most cartographers still have no idea where Mali is. And in your wake, rumors blossom. Did you bring thousands of slaves with gold belts? Did you pay for an entire mosque to be built overnight? Did a donkey trip on a gold ingot and become a saint? Okay, maybe not that last one. But the point stands. Your Hajj became legend, and the legend follows you home. As you ride back toward Niani, tired and perhaps a little less naive, you start thinking not just of faith or fortune, but of what you'll build now that the world knows your name. You arrived at this pilgrimage as a ruler of gold. You return as something else, a symbol, a myth, and accidentally a financial disruptor. You're back. After nearly a year crossing deserts, dazzling foreign cities, and nearly bankrupting Cairo with your generosity, your feet finally touch home soil again. And even though the sun in Mali feels familiar, it now seems to lean towards you with extra warmth, like it's glad its favorite golden child has returned. But you've changed. The pilgrimage wasn't just a long walk with heavy wallets. It was an awakening. You left Mali as a rich king with a good PR team and a sharp tailor. You return as the Mansa Musa, the king who put West Africa on the map, literally. And now, your mind won't stop humming with ideas. The first thing you do isn't throw a feast, it's build. You summon architects and artisans, many of whom you brought back from Cairo and Mecca, men with long beards, detailed blueprints, and very confused expressions about Malian humidity. You don't just want a fancy palace, you want to transform cities, to carve your devotion into stone, wood, and memory. Timbuktu becomes your canvas. It already existed, half trading post, half whispered legend. But you amplify it. Mosques first. You begin with the Jingareba Mosque, a sandstone marvel baked. In the desert heat, built under the guidance of an Andalusian architect whose name no one here can pronounce, but whose work will outlast generations. Historians still argue whether the mosque's original dome was modelled on North African design, or if it merged local Sahelian styles with imported Islamic geometry. What they agree on? It was stunning. And it wasn't alone. You commission libraries, schools, Quranic centers. You import books, scholars, scrolls, and inkpots by the crate. Suddenly, Timbuktu, this place that once sounded like the punchline of a joke, is becoming the intellectual heart of West Africa. You sit in the cool shade of your palace, listening to the recitation of students, children who now dream not just of gold, but of geometry and God. Traders pause their routes to linger in markets filled with not just spices and salt, but parchment and argument. You've started a literacy arms race, and you're winning. Of course, not everyone loves the changes. Some elders mumble that you've brought in foreign ideas, that the mosques are too tall, the scholars too proud, the call to prayer too loud. You smile and nod and keep building anyway, because you're not just shaping cities, you're shaping legacy. There's a fringe account, probably exaggerated, of you personally placing the first brick of every new mosque. You in your finest robes, crouched low, whispering a prayer into the soil before setting the stone. Whether true or not, the griots love it. It becomes part of the legend. And the people, they adjust. They always do. Gold still flows. Markets still hum. But now, alongside merchants and musicians, you have astronomers tracking the stars, poets debating metaphors, and mathematicians squinting at sand-scratched equations under clay lamps. Mali is no longer just wealthy, it's wise. You don't stop at Timbuktu. You turn your gaze to Gao, Walata, Niani. Each becomes a jewel in your architectural diadem. You issue laws that protect scholars and offer stipends to scribes. You make it clear. In this empire, knowledge is power, and power gets free lunch. There's something deeply satisfying about this pivot. Sure, you're still rich beyond comprehension. You still ride a horse with a golden saddle and drink date wine from goblets shaped like elephant tusks. But now, when people speak your name in Cairo or Damascus, they don't just think of gold. They think of culture, of learning, of spiritual leadership wrapped in economic swagger. And yet, you're not finished. One evening, sitting under a baobab tree that looks old enough to remember your great-great-grandfather, you reflect on the journey, from accidental king to accidental economist to accidental cultural reformer. You think of Mecca, not the city, but the feeling. That brief moment when you stood shoulder to shoulder with strangers and felt humbled by the scope of belief. You want that for your people. So you push deeper into religious infrastructure. You send envoys to Egypt and the Hijaz to study Islamic jurisprudence. You write to distant scholars and invite them to Mali, offering stipends, estates, and of course, gold. Some come out of piety, others out of curiosity. A few just wanted a break from Ottoman bureaucracy, but they come, and with them comes debate. The Malian elite, once content with a blend of traditional beliefs and light Islamic ritual, now find themselves grappling with new concepts: inheritance law, zakat taxes, ritual purity, paper versus parchment. The court is buzzing like a beehive in a thunderstorm. Historians still debate whether Musa's Islamization of Mali was grassroots or enforced from above. The reality? A little of both. You encouraged, you subsidized, and occasionally you insisted, but always with tact. You weren't trying to erase the past, just polish it. Somewhere in this swirl of religious fervor and intellectual energy, you commission what might be your strangest gift. A translation of Arabic poetry into Bambara, performed by court singers during royal banquets. And it slaps, turns out. Even 14th century Mali loves a rhyming couplet about divine mercy. Your advisors begin to realize something you've known for years now. Wealth isn't measured in gold bars or camel trains. It's measured in minds lit up like lanterns and yours blazing. Time passes, the gold still glitters, and your robes still sweep the marble floors like waves over smooth rock. But your ambitions now run deeper than wealth. You no longer seek to impress with sheer volume of gold. Now, you want precision. To engineer an empire where every coin, every mosque, every school, and every scholar fits together like a quiet, elegant prayer. You turn your attention to infrastructure. It's not glamorous exactly. No one composes ballads about the efficient layout of irrigation channels or the brilliance of properly placed way stations. But you know better. You've seen the bustling cities of Cairo and Mecca. You've watched caravans move like arteries, feeding great empires. So you begin to weave Mali together, strand by strand. You commission the repair and expansion of roads. Long, dusty stretches, flanked by date palms and humble inns. You ensure every major city is linked to the next with reliable routes, guarded by patrols and peppered with shade huts for travelers. Trade flourishes. Messengers ride faster. Pilgrims move with less fear. And with every road, your reach grows. You start sending out officials, trained, trusted, and often mildly terrified of disappointing you. Their job? Enforce laws, collect taxes, report bandit activity, and, this is key, build trust. You don't want to rule with an iron fist. You want to rule with a velvet glove, lined with gold thread. Sure, but still. This bureaucratic muscle earns you something priceless: stability. Historians still argue whether this era of peace was due more to your administration or the sheer psychological effect of your gold-flooded reputation. Whatever the cause, the result is unmistakable. Mali becomes a place where people want to live. Merchants reroute their caravans. Craftsmen migrate in. Even a few former enemies request diplomatic marriages. You've turned Mali into a magnet, and at the heart of this magnetic empire lies something even more powerful than roads or gold. Data. Well, not the spreadsheet kind. More like oral intelligence. Griots, messengers, spy networks wrapped in poetry. You start tracking the pulse of the empire through information. Which village had a bad harvest? Which port town is trading ivory under the table? Who's been murmuring about rebellion over the evening millet stew? You know things. People know you know things. And that, quietly, is power. One day, an advisor brings you troubling news. A northern trade hub has been hit by drought. Caravans are stuck. Tempers are flaring. Local leaders are fighting over access to a shrinking well. The usual response would be to send soldiers. You send engineers. Weeks later, the well is deeper. The trade flows again, and you receive a thank you basket filled with dried figs and precisely carved ivory dice. You chuckle, problem solved without drawing a sword. That's your style now. Elegant intervention. Of course, it's not all water and poetry. The empire is vast. Mistakes happen. A governor embezzles tax funds. A schoolmaster gets caught charging tuition for free Quran lessons. You deal with them firmly, but rarely with public spectacle. Discipline? Yes. Humiliation? No. You want justice to feel surgical, not theatrical. And speaking of schools, your universities bloom. The Sankor Madrasa in Timbuktu especially becomes legendary. You walk its halls one morning, soft sandals on sun-warmed clay, and pause to listen as a boy recites Quranic verses in Arabic, so crisp it sounds like a waterfall in syllables. You nod, pretending not to tear up. Sankore grows into a global centre of learning. Its reputation spreads across North Africa, even into Andalusia. There are whispers, just whispers, that scholars from Cairo are now referencing Malian texts. Imagine that. You used to be the one importing ideas. Now you're exporting them. Fringe accounts even claim you created a special scholarship for students who could memorize all 114 surahs of the Quran and debate algebra with a straight face. It's probably exaggerated, but you like the sound of it. Still, even in this golden era, you worry. Your empire is strong, but strength can be brittle. You've seen kingdoms crumble after the death of a great king. Succession is a dangerous game, and you're no fool. You begin grooming heirs, sons, nephews, trusted generals. You don't just teach them to rule, you teach them to listen. 1. Night. You sit beside a fire with your eldest son. You hand him a rolled parchment, a letter from a scholar in Damascus praising the Sankor curriculum and requesting a rare Malian manuscript. Your son smiles and says something simple. They see us now, and in that moment, your heart warms more than gold ever could. Because yes, they do. The world now knows Mali, knows you. Not just as a man who gave away gold, but as a man who built something worth remembering. And that is a different kind of wealth. But even in the glow of prosperity, you know the sands of time don't pause for anyone. Not even a king whose name now echoes from Cairo to Cordoba. So you begin turning your gaze outward once again, though this time not in pilgrimage or conquest, but in something stranger, myth-making. It starts subtly. You notice how people speak of you now, not just as a ruler, but as a figure. The way they lower their voices when they mention your name in the markets. The way children lean forward during griot stories about the day Mansa Musa bought Cairo. They don't ask if it's true. They don't care. The point isn't truth, it's awe. And so, you lean in. You begin curating your own legend. You sponsor storytellers. You ensure every village has a griot trained not just in the old epics, but in the new ones. Yours. They sing of your caravan glinting like fire across the dunes, of your wisdom that settled feuds before they ever began, of the night you stared at the stars and named them like old friends. Historians still argue whether you actively manipulated your image or simply encouraged a cultural snowball already rolling. Either way, you're now more than a man. You're a symbol of wealth, of justice, of vision. And symbols last longer than skin. But symbols also attract curiosity. Word reaches you of a map, made by Europeans, those pale-skinned, sea-obsessed scribblers up north, trying to sketch the known world. And guess what's smack in the middle of West Africa? You. Or rather, a tiny drawing of a bearded king on a throne, holding a gold nugget the size of a watermelon. It's labelled Mansa Musa, Lord of the Negroes of Guinea. You laugh, a little flattered, a little alarmed. It's not accurate, of course, Your geography's been shrunk, distorted, squeezed between deserts and monsters. But it's impactful. For people who never stepped foot on African soil, you've become a shorthand for unthinkable wealth. And that changes everything. Suddenly, outsiders start showing more interest. North African traders grow bolder in their proposals. Diplomats from distant kingdoms send delicately worded invitations. Some come in peace. Some come with the thin smile of ambition. You know the look. There's even an odd account, fringe, probably invented, of a Venetian merchant trying to sneak into Mali disguised as a Quran seller just to catch a glimpse of your throne room. He gets caught when he tries to pay for food with a mirror. A mirror, in Mali, where sunlight is free and sand reflects everything. Still, you admire the nerve. So you do what you always do. Turn curiosity into leverage. You begin to formalize Mali's diplomatic posture. You appoint ambassadors, build embassies in key trading cities, and offer carefully measured gifts, enough to dazzle, never to impoverish. When a visiting prince tries to outshine you with an opal-inlaid dagger, you respond with a gold-plated manuscript stand carved with verses from the Quran. The message is clear. You might shine, but I glow. Back home, your people begin to feel it too. Not just pride, but a shift in how they understand themselves. Once, they were villagers with dust on their ankles. Now, they are citizens of the kingdom whose king makes maps blush. Young students at Sankor start sketching their own versions of the world, with Mali at the center, Timbuktu as a starburst, and lines radiating like arteries through the Sahara. And through it all, you remain calm, measured. Because while everyone else is busy telling stories about you, you're already planning your next move. There's a stretch of coast to the west. Not a port exactly, more like a suggestion of ocean. Few go there, fewer return, but something about it calls to you. Maybe it's the wind, salty and strange. Maybe it's that map you saw, with the great Atlantic sketched in blue swirls like a beast sleeping at the edge of the world. One night, you gather your most trusted advisors and make a quiet, startling announcement. You want to explore what lies beyond. The room stills. Someone coughs nervously. A few think it's a joke. Others, those who've watched your eyes linger on horizon lines, know better. You don't intend to go yourself. You're too valuable now. But you plan the expedition with the same care. You planned your Hajj. Ships will be built, supplies rationed, crews trained. Not just sailors, but scribes, translators, herbalists. This isn't a raid or a trade mission. It's a question flung at the edge of the world, and the Empire holds its breath. Now, here's where the record blurs. Some say the fleet launched and was never heard from again. Others claim a second fleet followed and succeeded. There are tantalizing hints found centuries later of West African presence in the Americas before Columbus ever laced up his boots. Historians still debate whether Mansa Musa truly commissioned these voyages, or whether later griots invented them to match your mythic scale. But one thing is certain, you believed Mali could reach farther, and that belief alone, bold, strange, ocean-scented, is worth remembering. So, here you are, not just the richest man in history, but the man who taught an empire to imagine itself bigger than the maps allowed. And in the silence that follows your orders, in the darkness before the first sails are hoisted, you smile. Because, you know, even if they never return, the idea has already sailed. The ships are gone now, Out into the great blue mystery they've vanished, leaving no footprints, only rumors. Some claim the ocean swallowed them whole. Others whisper they found new lands where the trees drip with honey and the birds sing, in languages no griot can mimic. You don't chase the answers. You don't need to. The question was the gift. Back in Mali, you turn your focus inward again. Not out of fear, not out of boredom, but because there's something else calling. The weight of legacy. You're older now. Not ancient, not feeble, but the gold feels heavier when you wear it, and the desert sun no longer kisses your skin so gently. The world moves a bit faster, or maybe you move a bit slower. Either way, the message is clear. It's time to prepare Mali for after you. Succession has always been the greatest test of empire. You've seen what happens when great men die without a clear plan. Blood feuds, civil wars, cousins with swords, and zero charisma. You won't let Mali fall into that, so you begin to sculpt the future. Your chosen heir, Maga, is quiet, thoughtful, not dazzling like you, but careful, and in a way, that's what the empire might need next. A steward, a stabilizer. You begin bringing him closer, into council meetings, border negotiations, even the early morning walks through the palace gardens where peacocks strut like overpaid nobles. You test him, not with riddles or swordplay, but with decisions. You give him real power. Let him feel the consequences of his choices. Sometimes he stumbles. Once, he overtaxes a province, and they threaten revolt. You don't scold him. You make him go fix it. Boots in mud, face to face. With the farmers, he returns quieter. Better. Historians still debate whether Maga was your best option, or just your most politically convenient. But history tends to focus too much on perfection and not enough on preparation. And you prepare. Meanwhile, Mali continues to thrive. The markets are louder than ever. Gold still flows. Salt, slaves, manuscripts. Yes, even those cross the desert like whispers across a room. Your name remains spoken in reverence, etched into mosque walls and sung beneath starry skies. And yet, you begin to withdraw. Not completely. You still attend court. You still sign decrees. But you spend more time now at the mosques, at the schools, walking the halls of Sankore, where students argue about logic and law under thatched awnings. You like to sit silently, listening to debates about topics you don't even pretend to understand. Something about numbers that go imaginary. You chuckle and sip your tea. You've become something new now. Not just ruler, not just legend. You're a guardian of knowledge, a living bridge between old Mali and the Mali to come. One night, a traveller arrives from Fez, dusty and thin, carrying a manuscript bound in green leather. He's heard of your libraries, of Sankore, of you. He asks for an audience, not to flatter, not to ask for gold, but to share a theory about medicine involving boiled tree bark and dried ants. It's weird and fascinating, and you fund his research immediately. Why? Because ideas matter. You've spent your life building roads, temples, universities, and armies. But in these twilight days, you begin to suspect that curiosity may be your greatest monument. And yet, even now, there are cracks. You hear rumblings from the far south, tribes growing restless, governors skimming too much off the top. Nothing catastrophic, not yet. But empire, you realize, is not a statue, it's a sandcastle. No matter how golden, it needs constant tending, or it melts back into the tide. You lean harder on Maga, show him the hidden fractures, teach him how to read the space between reports, the tone of a letter, the way an emissary avoids eye contact, the pauses in a griot's story. These are signs, and he must learn to read them like holy text. There's one final task you take upon yourself. You begin writing, or at least dictating, what might become the Book of the Empire. Not a history exactly, more like a collection of advice, dreams, regrets, and prayers. You don't intend for it to be read today. You're writing for someone far down the line, some future Mansa standing in your sandals, facing his own crossroads. You write, "Gold is a fire. It warms and burns the same." You write, "Build schools before you build armies." You write, "The people will follow your voice, but they will remember your silence." And somewhere in the pages, between all the maxims and memories, you finally begin to understand what you've built. Not just a kingdom, not just a legacy, but a direction, a compass. Mali no longer just exists. It points to knowledge, to power, to the possibility that an African empire can reshape the world's imagination. And that is no small thing. So you close your eyes and smile, while out in the distance, a student lights a lamp and copies your words into another book, by hand, by heart. The sun rises a little slower these days. Or maybe that's just how it feels to you, sitting on your veranda with sweetened tea in hand, watching the city wake. The donkeys bray, the market stalls creak open, the call to prayer drifts like a ribbon through the air. Timbuktu is alive, and you've made it that way. But the empire hums with a different rhythm now, one tuned not only to gold and trade, but to something softer, something less flashy. Memory. Because as your days begin to stretch and blend, you think more and more about what Mali will remember, not just of you, but of itself. So you turn your attention to the griots again. You've always funded them, of course. Griots are the lifeblood of Mali's memory, the living libraries who carry the stories of kingdoms in their chests. But now you sit with them more often, in the evenings, asking them to tell you what they've heard about you. It's a strange experience, being alive to hear your own myth. One griot says you once stopped a war by staring into a lion's eyes until it blinked and fled. Another claims your wealth came from a secret mountain of gold guarded by talking snakes. A third insists you met an angel disguised as a beggar in Cairo and gave him a robe made of stars. You laugh, you sip your tea, you let them talk. But afterward, when the stories have quieted, you lean forward and ask them, softly, to also tell the truth. Not just the glitter, not just the sparkle. Tell of the years when the river ran low and food was scarce. Tell of the rebellion in the north. Tell of the mistakes, because Mali won't endure on myth alone. It needs memory with backbone. And so, you fund a new project, the Archive of the Living Voice. It's not a building, not really, more of a network. Griots from across the empire are invited to share stories, personal, political, even painful, and have them recorded by scribes at Sankore. Some are oral, sung and drummed. Others are written in Mande script or Arabic. Together, they form a tapestry, far richer than gold. Historians still debate whether such a project actually existed, or whether it's a modern invention attributed to your reign. But let's be honest, you would have done it. You did care that much. Meanwhile, Maga continues to grow into his role. He's not flashy, doesn't toss gold into the streets, but he's sturdy, dependable. He calms a tax dispute in Walata without drawing blood. He quells a trade fight between salt merchants and camel herders by proposing a shared profits scheme, half genius, half luck. You begin stepping back further, letting him lead more meetings, letting him sign his own decrees. One day, without much fanfare, you stop wearing the crown in court. You place it beside you instead, a quiet signal to those who know how to read the room. And yet people still come to you, not for rulings now, but for stories. Grandmothers bring their grandchildren to point and say, "That's the one who saw Mecca." Traders bring coins from far-off lands and ask, "Is this one of yours?" A girl brings you a letter in flowing Arabic and says it's from her brother studying in Cairo, who learned to read because of your schools. You don't answer right away. You just hold the letter, run your fingers over the ink, and nod, because this is what matters. You start keeping fewer things. No more piles of gifts from foreign dignitaries. No more gold trinkets. You even give away your peacock feather chair to a library. In its place, you use a simple carved stool. It creaks, but it fits your back better. People notice, of course. They whisper, "Has the Mansa lost his spark?" You haven't. You've simply turned inward. Gold was never the goal. It was the tool. And now, as the twilight deepens, you find yourself focusing on one last great work. Stillness. You learn to meditate. It's not easy. The mind wanders. 1 minute you're breathing with intention. The next you're mentally restocking the caravan routes. But with practice, the quiet grows longer. You begin to feel your breath like the wind through a sail, steady, purposeful, invisible but real. And in these moments of stillness, something shifts. You see the empire not just as it is, but as it was, when your uncle led it, when your caravan left Niani, when you returned from Mecca glowing like a comet, and also how it might be, long after your dust. Not perfect, not untouchable, but alive, growing, learning. Historians still argue about your final years, how active you were, whether you abdicated fully or ruled from behind the curtain. But Mali didn't need another miracle from you. It needed a lesson. How to release power, how to age with purpose. And you gave it that. You spend your last days like a gardener who's already planted the seeds and now just waters them, hums a little, watches them reach. And one night, as you lie beneath the stars, listening to the soft sounds of Timbuktu, the laughter, the prayer, the rustle of pages, you think, yes, this is enough. You don't remember exactly when the gold stopped being the loudest thing in the room. It used to announce itself, glinting off your wrists, weighing down your robes, jingling like distant bells with every step. It made people stop mid-sentence, made foreign kings squint with envy. But now it just sits there, quiet, decorative, like a song that's already played its chorus. You've traded opulence for observation. These days, you wander the edges of Timbuktu dressed like a scholar, not a king. People still recognize you, of course they do, but they treat you differently, not with the frenzy of subjects before a throne, but with the gentle reverence reserved for grandparents and saints. And honestly, it's kind of nice. You watch the city move, children racing between market stalls, camels chewing like philosophers, robed students hunched over scrolls in doorways. You pause often, nodding to people, sometimes asking them what they've learned today. Sometimes they tell you something true, sometimes something absurd. One small boy insists he discovered a new color by mixing mud with pomegranate juice. You commission him a paintbrush anyway. Meanwhile, Mali changes, not crumbling, not rising, just changing. Like a river shifting course ever so slightly. Trade routes evolve. The Berbers start charging higher taxes on caravans and coastal traders from the Atlantic whisper of new opportunities further west. The world is stretching, tilting, and Mali must balance. Maga rules now, officially, publicly. You sit in council sometimes, but rarely speak. He consults you on delicate matters, when the salt mines flood unexpectedly, or when rumors spread of Songhai stirring again, but mostly he acts alone, and you nod. Let him. Because succession isn't about replacing, it's about continuing. Still, not all agree with how things are shifting. Some nobles grumble. They say Maga lacks your charisma, your vision, your gold-slinging bravado. They miss the spectacle, the grandeur. One even compares him to a lion born without teeth. You nearly snort your tea when you hear it, but later you tell Maga, and he smiles thinly and says, "Let them say what they like, as long as the lion still protects the pride." Good answer. You also hear troubling whispers from the eastern provinces. Bandits, yes, but something deeper. An exhaustion, maybe. The endless desert routes wear down more than just sandals. They grind away patience too. Merchants complain of fewer guards. Tribes begin hoarding their own gold, their own stories. The center is holding, but just barely. And you know what that means. You send out traveling advisors, quiet ones, not enforcers, but listeners. They return with reports. Local leaders want more say, more autonomy. You advise Maga to grant it. Empires that grip too tightly, you say, crack. Historians still argue whether you were the architect of Mali's decentralization or simply its chronicler. Either way, the record shows. Under your influence, the empire becomes less about one man and more about many voices. Not quite democracy, but certainly not dictatorship. One curious moment. A famed Egyptian scholar visits Sankore. His name's lost now. Some say it was Taki al-Muqaddasi. Others say he never existed at all, but what matters is what he brought. A theory that stars could predict political fates, not just individual horoscopes, but entire empires mapped by constellations. You meet him. He draws charts on leather, speaks of Jupiter and Saturn, and tells you that Mali's golden age is nearing a celestial bend. A turning point. You thank him politely. You don't believe him, not really. But that night, lying on your rooftop under a sky crowded with stars, you wonder if maybe, just maybe, the empire has its own horoscope and its own fading season. Still, you don't panic. Instead, you begin preparing final instructions, not funeral plans. That would be too dramatic, too rigid. What you draft instead is more like a map, a moral will. You write letters to your children, to Maga, to the scholars of Sankore, to the griots. In each, you include two things: a memory, something ordinary, like the scent of date bread baking in Gao, or the way the gold dust shimmered on your skin after a festival. A wish, small, specific, personal. Let the libraries stay open on full moon nights. Please plant more fig trees near the city walls. Let my great-grandchildren learn Arabic and Mande. You seal these letters with wax. No royal emblem, just a thumbprint. Simple, human, and finally one evening you go for a walk. No guards, no fanfare. Just you, cloaked in indigo, strolling the edges of the city as dusk folds itself over the rooftops. You pass a girl reciting poetry to herself, a man braiding his daughter's hair, a dog sleeping beside a sack of salt. Life in all its gentle absurdity. And for a moment you wonder, what would the world have looked like if you'd never returned from that Hajj? No gold tsunami in Cairo, no booming Timbuktu, no libraries, no pilgrims, no pyramids built with West African blueprints. Would the world have forgotten Mali altogether? Maybe, but you didn't disappear. You came back, you gave, you ruled, you dreamed, and now, slowly, you step aside. Because legacies don't end with kings, they end with people remembering why they mattered. You wake to silence. Not the eerie kind. Not the silence of absence or warning. No, this is something softer. Like the hush before rain. Like a library at dawn. The kind of silence that feels full. You sit up slowly, stretching joints that now creak like old timbers. A servant offers you tea, but you wave it away. Today you want your senses sharp. There's no ceremony planned, no event scheduled. But something in your bones tells you, this is one of those days history will remember, even if no one takes notes. Outside, the city stirs. Niani hasn't changed much on the surface. Its adobe walls still bake in the heat. Its children still dart between goats. Its river still glitters like spilled silver under the morning sun. But beneath all that, something has shifted, grown wiser, quieter. You've been away from the court for weeks now. A retreat, they called it. A pause, really. You wanted time. Time to think. Time to remember. Time to listen to the winds change. And oh, they have. The empire is steady. Not soaring, not crumbling. Just steady. Maga governs well. Maybe better than you ever expected. He's not you, but he doesn't need to be. He's himself, and that, oddly enough, is perfect. Historians still squabble over how much of the empire's golden age was yours and how much was inertia. Wealth set in motion generations before. Some claim you were lucky. Others call you a master strategist. The truth, of course, is somewhere in the soup pot. You stirred it. You added spices. But the fire was already burning when you arrived. So you've been letting go. Bit by bit, like sand slipping through a clenched fist. First, the Royal Council. Then, the Treasury. Then, the ceremonial duties. You even let your favourite peacock go. Its shriek was annoying anyway. What remains are the essentials. Books, letters, conversations with scribes, visits to schools. Sometimes, just watching people live. One day, a merchant's son delivers a scroll to your doorstep. It's a treatise on astronomy, written by a 14-year-old girl from Jena. Her diagrams are crude, her calculations ambitious, but the ideas, they glow. She's trying to prove that planets move in spirals, not circles. You read it twice, then summon a messenger. Find her, you say. Give her a scholarship and new ink. Another time, a former slave comes to you with a strange proposal. A school where children from every region, yes, even conquered ones, can study together. You nod slowly, offer funds, and ask only one question. Will they eat well? He grins. Better than palace staff, inshallah. You laugh and sign the grant. More and more, your focus sharpens not on glory, but seed planting. You've stopped seeking monuments. Stones crumble. Names fade. But ideas? They walk quietly into the future on other people's legs. And Mali, for all its gold and grandeur, will live or die by its mines. One evening, you walk through the gardens of your old palace. There, overgrown now. Not neglected, just relaxed. A pomegranate tree leans against a fig. A tortoise trudges across the mosaic path like it owns the place. You find a bench near the pool. Your pool, the one where envoys once soaked their dusty feet before entering your court. You close your eyes, and suddenly, the memories rush in. The gold-laden caravan leaving Niani. The stunned faces in Cairo. The swirling sandstorms that ate whole camps. The scholars at Sankor debating over grammar. The first time Maga held the royal seal and his hand didn't tremble. The griots humming under their breath as they recited your life aloud, like a prayer. You remember it all. Even the absurd stuff. The man who tried to sell you a magical talking camel. The noble who swore he could taste gold. The Italian artist who begged to paint your nose from 12 different angles. And in the middle of it all, you. You, both a boy dazzled by stories, and a man who became one. It hits you then how strange it is to live long enough to outgrow your own legend, to see it walking around like a guest at your table, nodding politely while you eat your stew. But it's also comforting. You're no longer building legacy. You are legacy. And that means you're allowed to rest. So you do. That night, under the same stars you once studied with wandering astronomers, you draft your final message, not to Mali, not to your son, but to time. It's just a scrap of parchment, tucked between the pages of an old religious text. On it, you write, "We were never just gold. We were dust and ideas and longing." Tell that part too. Then you fold it and place it back on the shelf. Tomorrow will come with its usual creaks and chaos. Maybe another scholar will visit. Maybe another storm will pass. Maybe the sun will rise behind clouds, or not rise at all. You're not in charge of that anymore. But for now, tonight, you are at peace. And for the first time in years, you sleep without dreams. Your days grow gentler. It's not that you stop moving, just that you move slower, with intention. Like a scribe placing each letter carefully on a scroll. You still rise before the sun most mornings. You still bathe in cold water, sip mint, tea, and trace the worn tiles of your garden paths barefoot, the way you used to as a boy. But the world feels softer now, like someone turned down the volume just a bit. Niani continues to hum without you. The palace gates open and close. Couriers dart in and out, their feet leaving small clouds of dust. Your sons and their sons have started taking audiences. Some days you hear echoes of your own voice in their tone. Other days, thankfully, you don't. And you? You tend to your scrolls. You've begun compiling a book of gold, not a treasury inventory. No, that would be too easy. This is something different. A record of moments, anecdotes, lessons learned the hard way, stories that don't usually make it into royal archives, but deserve to live somewhere. Things like, if a camel refuses water, don't assume it's dying. It might just be insulted, or trust a man who names his horse, distrust one who names his sword, and The smell of wet papyrus will always remind you of Cairo, even if it shouldn't. It's part memoir, part whisper, part cautionary tale. You're writing it mostly for the griots, so that when they sing of you around future campfires, they have a few new verses, ones that show your cracks, not just your crown. Meanwhile, the empire's edges continue to blur. Songhai grows restless again. Down by the Niger Bend, a young general named Sunni Ali is beginning to attract followers. He's brash, charismatic, ambitious. Historians will later debate whether you ever heard his name, whether you laughed him off or saw him coming. But, let's be honest, you notice the tremors. Not fear, not yet. Just the first rumbles of something that would, one day, become a storm. And storms don't frighten you anymore, because you've learned that empires don't fall all at once. They unwind, slowly, like thread pulled from the hem of a cloak. What matters isn't stopping the pull, but weaving something new before the unraveling finishes. That's why you spend more time with the children, not just your grandchildren, but the city's orphans too. You fund a small school beneath the mosque where they learn to write their names, identify constellations, and tell jokes without getting slapped. One boy, Camben, is particularly sharp. He draws maps in the sand with a date twig, claims he can navigate to Cairo blindfolded. You ask him what he'll be when he grows up. Storyteller, he grins. But only the funny stories. The serious ones make people sleepy. You laugh. Then hand him your unfinished book of gold. Add something, you say. And he does. A crude little drawing of a lion wearing spectacles. Perfect. You also begin spending more time by the river. Not fishing. Your hands aren't nimble enough anymore. But just watching. The river doesn't rush like it used to. Or maybe it does. And you're just noticing different parts of it now. The eddies, the shimmer, the reeds bending in rhythm. You realize that power is like water. It carves, carries, and changes everything. It touches, but it doesn't belong to anyone. Not really. There's one final journey you want to make, not far. Just a visit to Sankor. You want to walk its halls one last time, smell the old ink, hear the rustle of pages, feel the presence of generations thinking. It takes some convincing. Your attendants fret over the trip, but you insist. And when you finally arrive, leaning on a polished wooden cane, the students part like waves. One girl, no older than 10, recites a passage from Al-Farabi by heart. Another asks you what it felt like to ride across Egypt with enough gold to break an economy. You answer both softly, but mostly you listen. In one quiet corner, you find a small exhibit. Mansa Musa's pilgrimage. Echoes of gold. It's modest, a sand map. A faded robe replica. A few coins behind glass. You stand there for a while, and for once, you don't feel like the person being remembered. You feel like a visitor to your own myth. It's humbling and strangely peaceful. That night, before returning to Niani, you climb to the roof of Sankora and sit with one of the older scholars. You speak of tides, of how everything moves in cycles. Kings, empires, even stars. He nods. Then he says, "Do you think you'll be remembered?" You smile. Not the way I was, but maybe the way I meant to be. He doesn't ask what you mean. He doesn't need to. And together, under a moon wide as a silver platter, you listen to the pages below, whispering their way toward forever. You wake slower now. Gone are the days when sunrise yanked you from sleep like a general's trumpet. These mornings, Your body negotiates its return to the world. Your joints debate every movement. Your breath takes its time. Even your thoughts stretch, yawn, and shuffle into place like old scribes returning from prayer. You don't mind, because the world no longer expects you to lead it. Instead, it invites you to notice it. Like today, when you catch the scent of roasted millet before your eyes are even open, or when you hear the low clop of donkeys delivering papyrus to the palace library, or when you realize the date tree outside your chamber has borne fruit again, sweet, golden, and just slightly wrinkled, like you. It's the small things now. You've started collecting them, actually. One corner of your room has become a cluttered altar to mundanity, a smooth stone from the riverbank, a broken flute a child gifted you, the worn strap from your oldest pair of sandals. Each item has a story. None of them are grand, but they all feel like pieces of something real. You've also taken up correspondence. Letters arrive weekly, some from foreign lands, others from within Mali itself. One prince from Morocco sends you a chess puzzle every month, daring you to solve it faster than he can. You always do, but you let him win in your replies. Another letter comes from a weaver in Gao. She's heard rumors that you still read late into the night, and has sent you a blanket dyed with indigo and embroidered with stars. You wrap it around your legs when the air cools. It smells faintly of smoke and mint. And then, one day, a letter arrives from Mecca. Not a request, not a summons, just a greeting, from a scribe who once saw your caravan pass through Medina, glittering like a misplaced constellation. He remembers the gold, yes, but also the laughter, the chaos, the way your musicians kept playing even when their camels tried to join in. You made the desert feel like a festival, he writes. We still talk about it. You smile at that, because you remember too. You remember the coins flung into crowds, the sticky heat of packed tents, the way the stars looked like spilled salt above the dunes. But you also remember the stomach cramps, the bandit rumors, the blisters on your feet. Funny how history keeps only the sparkle. Historians still argue whether your pilgrimage was pure devotion or a strategic flex of Mali's wealth. Some say it was both. Some say neither. But you? You remember standing outside the car bar in silence, feeling your heartbeat slow, feeling utterly insignificant and deeply connected at once. And that, to you, was enough. In the evenings now, you often sit outside with the younger scribes. They bring their questions. Some ask about politics, others about religion. A few just want gossip. You indulge all of them. One asks, was it hard being emperor? You pause, then say, it's like holding a sleeping lion, lovely when still, terrifying when it stirs. They laugh, but you can tell they're scribbling that one down. You tell stories too, like the time a desert guide tricked your entire convoy into walking in circles just to prove a point about overconfidence. Or the Cairo merchant who tried to sell you the same ostrich egg 3 times. Or the scribe who got drunk on date wine and accidentally sent a love poem to the Sultan of Fez. It feels good to be useful again, not as ruler, but as witness. Meanwhile, back in Niani, a new construction rises. It's not a palace or a fort, but a library, funded by your private treasury, designed to be open to all, male, female, rich, poor, foreigner, native. The builders carve sun symbols into its outer walls, a nod to your reign, perhaps. Or maybe just a way to remind people that light belongs to everyone. You don't oversee it. You just walk past sometimes and nod. Your empire has changed. Trade routes shift. Foreign languages creep in like vines. Some cities shrink, others bloom. There are rumors that Timbuktu is becoming the new center of learning, eclipsing even Sankora. You've learned not to take it personally, because that's what greatness does. It moves, not away, just forward. One day, while walking near the river, you pass a young griot practicing with his kora. He fumbles, winces, mutters something under his breath. You sit beside him and ask to hear his song. "It's not ready," he says, sheepish. "Neither was I," you reply. "Play anyway." He does. It's clumsy, off-key, too fast in places, but it's alive, and you know, someday, someone will hear this boy sing and feel history breathing through the strings. That night, you dream of dust and drums, of camels and lanterns and silver bowls filled with honey, of voices calling your name not with reverence, but with affection, of a map with no borders, just stories. You wake with tears in your eyes, not from sorrow, but from knowing you lived a life loud enough to echo and quiet enough to listen. By now, you've become something of a shadow in your own palace. People still bow when you pass, of course, but it's gentler now, more like a nod to memory than command. Servants still leave your meals in the same ceramic dishes, the patterns faded from years of careful washing. And your guards, they mostly guard your naps these days, standing post outside while you doze to the sound of pigeons rustling in the rafters. You no longer sit on the throne. Not because you were dethroned, no. That kind of drama would have made the griots too happy. You simply stepped aside, left the throne to your chosen heir, a nephew actually. One of those competent, calm, vaguely boring types you used to underestimate. He's doing well by all accounts. Mali hasn't crumbled. No one's rioting. The camels still walk in orderly caravans. You're proud of that. It turns out succession doesn't have to be a bloody business. It can be quiet, thoughtful, like handing off a torch rather than lighting a fire. Still, some courtiers call you the golden ghost behind your back. Not maliciously, just because you float through the corridors like a memory wrapped in silk. And because, truth be told, your skin has taken on a shimmer. Not from magic, just decades of shea butter and dust. You find it funny. What's even funnier? You've become a tourist attraction in your own city. Foreign dignitaries come hoping to catch a glimpse of you. They pretend to visit the gardens or the mosque, but really they're peeking around corners, whispering things like, "Is that him?" You usually give them a little wave, sometimes a wink. Once, you even faked a limp just to mess with a particularly nosy Venetian merchant. Historians still argue whether you actually met any Europeans during your lifetime. Some say Genoese traders passed through Niani briefly. Others insist the Portuguese never made it that far inland. But one thing's clear. Stories of your wealth had already reached them, carried across deserts and over oceans, embroidered with every retelling. One Italian scribe even drew a map with your face on it, crown, scepter and all, floating above West Africa like a royal emoji. You've seen the copy. You looked ridiculous, but also glorious. There's a strange freedom in becoming a legend while still being alive. You can poke fun at the myths, reinvent them, nudge them a little closer to the truth, or away from it, if that's more fun. Your favorite exaggeration. The one about how your laughter could heal fevers. Completely false. but you've leaned into it. Children come to you with sniffles, and you give them your most exaggerated chuckle. Works just as well as any date syrup. 1. Afternoon, you find yourself sitting with your youngest daughter beneath a mango tree. She asks you if you remember the day she was born. You do. It was the day a zebra wandered into the palace kitchen and ate half a basket of spices. The entire staff was sneezing for a week. She giggles, not at the zebra, but at the idea of you being flustered. I thought you were never surprised, she says. Oh, I was, you reply. Just got good at hiding it. You tell her more stories, some true, some softened by time, about the river that once rose so high it touched the mosque steps, about the falcon that refused to be tamed even by a magician from Ifriqiya, about the dream you once had of a city made entirely of glass, where people walked barefoot and never lied. She asks if that place is real. Probably not, you say, but it should be. Nights pass like pages now, some filled with quiet dreams, others just the slow turning of hours. You've grown to love both. There's no longer a pressure to be meaningful or efficient or wise. You're simply here, breathing, remembering, watching the world spin slowly in candlelight. One evening, you find an old coin beneath your pillow. Not gold, surprisingly, just copper, worn thin, with a faded symbol you can't quite place. Maybe a gift from a child. Maybe something you left yourself and forgot. You keep it. Not because it's valuable, but because it isn't. That's the lesson, isn't it? That not everything precious needs to be gilded. That the smallest things, the mango shared with your daughter, the tune hummed under your breath, the feeling of wind through cotton robes, those are the real treasures. The rest is embellishment. That night, the city hosts a festival. Not for you, not anymore. But you're invited, of course. You decline. Instead, you stand on your balcony, listening to the distant drums, watching the lanterns float upward, bobbing like stars that forgot which way was down. You think of how many of these you've seen, and how somehow each one feels new. A servant brings you a bowl of spiced millet and honey. You take one bite, then another, and for a moment, just a moment, you are not emperor or legend or ghost. You're just full and warm and here, and that's enough. The morning air hums softer these days. It doesn't burst in like a herald anymore. It whispers through your window, nudges your curtain aside like a friend checking in. The birds don't screech, they trill politely. Even the sun seems to rise a little slower for you now, careful not to startle the old lion curled up in his chamber. You rise when you feel like it. No schedule, no petitions. No officials clearing their throats dramatically. Just the sound of sandals scuffing the hallway, and maybe the scent of someone baking flatbread too early for their own good. You don't miss ruling. You miss the idea of it sometimes, the neatness of being necessary. But the truth, you've grown fond of not being in charge. There's a strange joy in watching the world go on without needing your hand to steady it, like letting a kite fly higher because you finally trust the wind. Your family visits often. Some of your grandchildren don't quite believe the stories about you. One of them asked if it was true you used to wear shoes made of gold thread. You said yes. He asked if they were comfortable. You said terribly. Then told him to stick with leather and common sense. He grinned, then ran off to find something to break. Others are more curious. One granddaughter spends every afternoon sketching in the palace gardens. She draws the old walls, the faded banners, the cracks in the stone that have their own quiet history. She once asked you if she could draw your portrait. You said no. "I've been drawn enough," you told her. "Besides, I changed too much to stay still." She drew your sandals instead. That felt more accurate. Meanwhile, the city keeps changing. Niani breathes like a living thing, old but not tired. New merchants arrive, hawking spices you don't recognize. A young griot performs with a string instrument you've never seen, shaped like a moon sliced in half. A new dialect slips into common speech, lilting and light, like music through reeds. And you don't fight any of it. Historians still argue whether your legacy was preserved through policy or poetry, whether your true genius lay in trade routes or tolerance, but you're starting to see the answer was always both. Maybe neither. Maybe the real legacy is the way people keep telling your story, wrong, embellished, half-remembered, but always with a glint in their eye. One evening, your nephew, the current emperor, comes to visit. He's grown more confident. His robes are simpler than yours ever were, but he wears them like armor. You sip tea together in the garden, beneath the fading orange of twilight. He asks for advice. You shrug. Keep the grain flowing, the river clear, and the poets paid. He chuckles. That's it. That's enough. He looks down at his hands, then says, "Do you think I'm doing it right?" You look at him. Really look. At the worry tucked behind his eyes, at the calluses forming on his fingers from too much signing of too many scrolls. You remember that feeling. "I think you're doing it your way," you say. That's the only kind that lasts. Later, as he leaves, he places a small object on the table beside you. It's a stone carving, polished smooth. Two figures, standing side by side, one holding a staff, the other a book. "I had this made," he says. "It's you, and knowledge." You don't tell him the figure with the staff looks like a tired goat herder. Instead, you smile, nod, and say, "It's perfect." That night, the stars are unusually clear. You step outside, barefoot, onto the cool stone. The moon hangs low, fat and glowing, like it's been waiting for you to come out and say goodnight. You take a long breath. You don't think about gold, or caravans, or even your mosque in Timbuktu. You think about the river, the way it bends without breaking, the way it carries what it must, releases what it doesn't, and keeps moving regardless. You think, you've become like that too. Someone once asked you what power felt like. You answered, loud. But now you know the real answer. Power is what stays after the noise is gone. It's in the stories whispered between market stalls, the coins with your image passed between strangers, the schools that teach in your language long after you've stopped speaking it. It's the silence you leave behind, the kind people still listen to, and so you sit under the stars on cool stone, not a king, not a myth, not a memory, just a man, exhaling. You wake up to soft footsteps, not the urgent kind, not those soldierly clacks that once meant messengers from the edge of the empire, or envoys bearing disputes over salt mines. No, these are slippers on sandstone steps. The kind of footsteps someone makes when they're used to being around a sleeping lion, and they don't want to wake it. It's the physician. Not because anything's wrong. He's just checking in. That's what he says now. Just checking in. As if a man who once commanded half of West Africa now needs a daily pat on the back and a mint tea to stay upright. But you let him have his ritual. You even pretend to wince when he pokes at your joints. Still got the strength of 10 donkeys, you mutter. He smiles politely, then presses a warm cloth to your wrist. You both know it's just a matter of time. You've started thinking about your father more lately. Funny, isn't it? How the mind loops back to the earliest things as the later ones grow heavier. You remember his calloused hands, his laughter like gravel and palm wine. You remember the way he used to sit outside the house after prayer, not speaking, just watching ants go about their day. You get it now. That silence, that stillness. Back then, you were too young, too antsy, always asking questions, always itching to be somewhere else. Now here you are, finally understanding the joy of staying exactly where you are. The city is quieter these days, or maybe you just hear it differently. You still go for walks when you can, slow ones. The guards pretend not to hover. Children point. Elders nod solemnly, like they're part of a long and sacred handshake that started decades ago and never really ended. Sometimes you visit the mosque, not to impress anymore or to be seen, just to sit. Let the air wrap around you like a cool robe. The imams know not to make a fuss. They let you sit in the corner near the carved wooden latticework where sunlight makes dancing patterns on the floor. You don't pray aloud, you just breathe. One day, you're sitting there when a little boy tiptoes over. He doesn't say anything at first, just stares at you with wide eyes and the kind of sincerity only children or madmen can manage. Then he asks, "Were you really the richest man in the world?" You look at him, at his dusty knees, his runny nose, his mismatched sandals, and you say, "Maybe." He frowns. That's not a real answer. You lean forward, whispering like it's a secret. Richest in gold? Maybe. Richest in stories? Probably. Richest in naps and mangoes and sunsets? Definitely. He doesn't get it. Not yet. But one day he might. He runs off to chase a goat, and you smile. Historians still argue whether you died peacefully in your sleep or vanished on another pilgrimage, this time to the afterlife. Some say your tomb lies beneath the Niger, swallowed by water and time. Others claim your bones rest in a golden box beneath a mosque's shadow, guarded by snakes and songs. You never confirmed it. You never will, because the truth doesn't matter as much as the telling. And your story, well, it's been told in many tongues. In Arabic, as a cautionary tale about gold without restraint. In Bambara, as a lullaby of riches and rivers. In French, as a line in a dusty ledger about African kings and their wild wealth. And in countless whispers across Mali, where grandmothers still rock infants to sleep by muttering. He once gave away so much gold. It made the price of bread go up for years. You'd laugh at that. Because it's true, and also very much not. Tonight, you sit again on your favorite bench, the one by the flowering bush with petals that smell like pepper and orange. The moon is rising. There's music in the distance. Soft drums, maybe a flute. Or maybe it's just the wind playing tricks. You close your eyes. Feel the earth breathing beneath you. Feel your own heartbeat, slow and steady, like the steps of a camel on an endless road. And finally, you rest. The night has stretched long, and your journey through the dust and gold of centuries has slowed to its final breath. Your feet, once blistered from walking continents, now rest still, the cool air wrapping around them like a silk blanket pulled snug over your legacy. You let go of the weight of crowns, the pressure of empire, the sparkle of coins and ceremonies. It all softens now, blurs at the edges like ink left out in the rain. There's no need to hold on to it. It remembers you just fine, and it will keep on whispering your name, whether you're awake to hear it or not. Far across the savannah, night. Birds call to one another, distant and fading. The stars blink overhead, slowly, lazily, as if they too are winding down. Somewhere, a river continues its patient journey, carrying bits of your story down to places you never saw. You breathe in one last time, deeply, gently. The world, large and loud as it once was, now curls inward like a cat, quiet and warm. The lights in the palace flicker. One goes out, then another, and now even your thoughts begin to dissolve, like gold dust in water, shimmering for a moment, then gone. Sleep, well, traveller, your kingdom sleeps with you.